Okay, welcome to the third presentation in this module. And again, with our tradition, we will go to the database and see something there, and it won't be particularly new for us this time because we, in our experiment previously, I believe we have looked into some ratios in the database between basic and purchase prices. So that's going to be our task today. So hopefully this will be a bit of a refresher, but we'll try to elaborate a few things to reinforce the connection between what is written in the code in terms of price linkages and what lives in the data as sort of base policy information. Let's remind ourselves of the tax conventions. So when we're talking about output tax and factor income tax instruments, we're seller focused, and so we're taking the ratio of transactions valued at the basic value or basic price to the supplier price, the seller price. And then for the other domestic tax instruments, we're always going to be defining those as the payer's price. And it says producer here because that's the convention and that's what's in the graphic, but it's really the buyer focused version of a tax. So this time it'll be that producer, the user, right? So again, the convention is producer because technically the government and investment and private household are producers of utility, right? So they have demands that are derived from those, to make utility. But think of it as the payer prices relative to the market prices. And so this way, if we keep these two conventions in mind, we'll always be getting taxes of one type, which is the power of the tax greater than 1 when we go and evaluate two ratios. Okay, so this producer or payer version of the price, let's just elaborate on that with something like TFD. This is the tax paid by firms on their domestic purchases. So this is an input tax. And if we went to find it in the database, we would see VDFP over VDFB. So domestic purchases by firms at producer prices, domestic purchases by firms basic prices. And so the ratio is going to be their price they're paying, or the transaction valued at the price they pay, versus the basic or market price. And so again, the quantities have to hold up, have to match up here. And so when we get to the right hand side here, we'll have PFD over PDS, the basic price in the denominator and the price being paid by each activity in the numerator. We could go and look at these two headers and evaluate for some commodity activity region pairing what the specific tax is. Not specific taxes. That's a different thing. The ad valorem taxes that are specific to a index, commodity C and activity A. Alternatively, we could just look up we can do it for private consumption. It's the same equation. You can see I just went in and swapped out the P's. Okay, so the difference in those in the nomenclature here between TFD and TPD is really just that second letter, which was telling us before it was firms that were the agent we were interested in. Now it's the private household that we're looking at. So we're going VD double P, VD PB, and then here we get the different prices with the same quantity, and then over here we get the power of the tax. So the quantity is the same in the base data values. The differences come from those prices. Thus, the ratio of those two for a given commodity C must be these differences in the effective price. So the payer has a different effective price. The price that they behave and respond to is different than the market price. So private purchases are being taxed in the EU. We can tell that right here. So just compare. This is the so you can see what I'm doing is opening the header VDPP the header VDPB, and I'll do that for all commodities and isolating on the EU. And if we compare across those two, you'll see that the paid amount, the buyer's valuation, is higher than the market's. That means part of theirs is going towards taxation. All three goods. Okay, if you'll open your Run GTAP, if you don't have it open, and again, be sure you're in NCORS 3x3. Maybe we can see something kind of interesting here. So we're going to try to replicate the data that was on that slide that we just saw. So I'm going to go to View, Base Data, Core Data, and you can see what happened there was it opened up as the smaller version Okay, and so typically when you open it, it looks like this, and so you see everything, and we're going to go down and focus on VDPP and VDPB. But I wanted to bring your attention to some pretty cool features here. And so one of those is, if you go down to so these are toggles. If you hold over them, you'll see you can change the font size, you can change how wide the rows are, and so forth. But over here, you can actually change the way ViewHar appears on your screen. And so you can make it centered as smaller, you can make it take the top half, you can make it take the bottom half, but what I want to do is make it take up the left hand side of my window. And so by clicking on that, when it looks like that, when it's just the left side, it'll move it to the left, and that's going to give me the chance I can open VDPP there, isolate on the EU, and I'll have those same values that I had before. And so what's nice is we can go back to Run GTAP, go to View, Base Data, Core Data. It'll open a new version of ViewHar for us. Let's do the same thing, but this time let's isolate on the right hand side. Okay, so we'll move down here to this bottom corner. If you follow my mouse down here, and what I want is that. So it's going to take up the right hand side of the screen. Now we can go back to ViewHar, and you see I have two versions of ViewHar open, both holding the base data file, and when we bring the left one up, they both stay open. Okay, so on the left hand side here we have VDPP, on the right hand side we have VDPB. We need to set our toggle again to EU, and you have the same comparison on your screen that I just had. So if you ever want to compare two sets of flows, well, this is a nice way to look at them if you're not interested in doing a lot of copy pasting in the spreadsheets. So especially when you're sort of investigating the base tax receipts or subsidy payments across some value flows, this is the way to do that. So just a nice feature of the GIMPACT suite, and specifically the ViewHar program, that I wanted to bring our attention to. Okay, so we saw those value flows. We know the implication from looking back to our price linkage equation, or sorry, our levels form of the price linkage. So we have a level of the tax here, a level of the price paid here, a level of the basic price here. And so we know that we're supposed to compare from here to here, and if that's bigger than 1, that ratio is larger than 1, right? Because the ratio here has to be the same as the ratio here by virtue of the quantities being equal. And so we can just compare these, and we see that as long as this is larger than this, then there's going to be a tax. And then we can, of course, just go through and evaluate that. And so I'm taking the ratio of those two values right here. So TPD must be equal to this quantity for food, must be equal to this quantity divided by this amount. The power of the tax in level form is 1.034, and then the percentage change tax rate, TPD, is 100% times 1.034. I'm sorry, that should say RTPD right there. That's an error. Okay, I stopped to edit that, sorry, again, so hopefully your slides will show that to be correct. Okay, I took the time to edit that really quickly, so that says RTPD now. I want that to represent the rate, the tax rate on private consumption, domestic. So TPD, this value flow over this one, and then we have the power of the tax calculated from that ratio, and then I'm skipping a few steps here and going straight to the rate because that's something that we can look up in the GTAP database, well, in the GTAP tax rates file. So we'll go check on that really quickly, but I can tell you I've already confirmed it and copied it here. So R sub TPD I'm just using for the tax rate. It's not really a variable in the model. So 100% times this power of the tax level, 1.034 minus 1, gives you 3.4. I left the percentage off, but it carries over, and then that's what I found. So let's check really quick in the tax rates. Okay, let's go to View, Base Data, and in the base data there are tax rates. RTPD. Let's focus on the EU. It says they're all 3, but I think if we do that, we'll see 3428. So 34 was a good approximation, so the tax rates are showing up just what we want. And now remember what goes with these. If you don't want to always be looking things up in the model, or sorry, in your old notes or in your PowerPoint slides when you're working in GTAP, there's a place to go and find all this base tax information. It is actually the file that creates these tax rates. So while that tax rates file is always there for us to see the information, and you can always look and see what is being defined there as tax rates, there's this code piece where we go to View, Tab Files, Shocks. Okay, so remember what is being calculated in the Shocks file is a set of shocks that would eliminate all the ad valorem instruments in the model. But it also has this second purpose of just giving you documentation of what the correct ratio on two values is for any of the tax instruments in the model. And so you can just scroll down. It's going to read some sets and define some coefficients and read all the data in. And eventually you'll get to something that looks like this. So it's using TO underscore L to make the level or the base power of the production tax or output tax on commodity C supplied by activity A in region R. And so if we just scroll down here to where it's defined as a formula, you'll see it's MAKEB over MAKES. So we can always go and find these things by looking up what is the instrument that we're interested in, add an underscore and L to it, and you'll always be able to go and recover for yourself right from Run GTAP, right? So just by knowing what the shocks file does and knowing what it has to accomplish, we can always go and find what the correct setup for the base tax rate is. Okay, so we know here we're going to get the power, the level of the power of the tax from making MAKEB over MAKES. So it's basic over supplier. Okay, this was really just my slide to remind myself to go show you the tax rates file, or the shocks.tab file, and see that you could always go and find what is this left-hand side ratio here. And so you could go in there and look, and you'll find that, of course, we just saw make B over make S is the right form to get the power of the output tax, you could go and find the one for TINC, EVFB over EVOS. Okay? Because, yeah, those are the initial values for those that we need. Okay, and we can also just, as a sort of a final piece here, if you wanted to sort of log or flag one sheet to give you a rundown on price linkages in the model, in the GTAP version 7 tab file, this should work nicely for you as a memory aid. And so we have first the two versions where they're sort of seller oriented, where the basic price is on the left hand side. So we have the basic price on the left hand side for these seller oriented. Alright, so here the firm has something to sell and the output can be taxed, or here the owner of an endowment is trying to sell it and they face an income tax before you get to the market, or here being the commodity by activity price before you get to PDS. Right, there's another price that comes right after that, PDS, and that's the aggregator of all activity versions of a commodity, the source aggregator. And then here we have the basic price for an endowment good. Move down here and you're on the buyer orientation, so firms buy the endowment, and so you could go PES, the supply, faces an income tax, get to the market price. Down here you get to the market price, add on a specific, again I say specific, but we shouldn't use that term for talking about taxes when they're all ad valorem. You get the whichever of these individually you might be looking at, TFE, E sub A sub R, that you're looking at can be added onto the basic price and you get the firm's price. So you go from seller to final payer for this endowment. You have the opportunity for income tax and the specific charge to the seller, or sort of changes the effective price of the seller. And then you have this buyer of, the user of the labor, for instance, paying a tax on the usage of that labor. So you have three prices: a basic price, which clears the market; the seller's price, which is effectively changed from the market price to the basic price by the income tax; and then the buyer or user's tax inclusive price, which will be different than the basic price if that is taxed. Okay, again, if there's no tax on income or on the FE changes, right? If there's a 0 here and a 0 here in your current simulation, right? These are exogenous variables. So if your current simulation has 0 and 0, then we expect these prices to move together. PES moves as PEB does because there's nothing here changing. That's just going to stay, the change will stay at 0. The wedge will be constant. So they'll move together, and then of course these would move together if there's no tax here. So you could see lots of price linkage opportunity with very little effect. And then of course down here we have the other set of basic prices that are buyer oriented, with the basic price on the right hand side always being that PDS, which follows from PCA. So PCA is the activity specific version of a price. PDS is that aggregator's price. So it's the price that actually things get sold over the homogeneous commodity. Okay, that was our review of price linkage in the data terms, looking at some value ratios in the database, and we looked at a couple of other tricks. One, how to open two versions of ViewHar at once to examine the data and get a feel for the tax rate, the power of the tax that's going to be in play, and then of course to go verify what ratios we should be looking at. We can look at shocks.tab. So please go ahead and proceed to your review quiz for this, and then if you have any questions, please reach out at the available contact information.